Welcome to everybody around the world, to all my subscribers. Felt like doing a spur of the moment video. I'm going to talk about how this world is really a prison planet. I don't know if there's others as well, but this is definitely a prison world, and we're definitely in prison. That's the great revelation, the great stark reality of our existence here. It's also why God allows suffering of all forms. And it's also why Satan is here and everything. So that's the great revelation. And there's actually, because it's the reality, there's a lot of evidence throughout the Bible for this. But I just wanted to start off with a verse in Matthew 25, verse 31. And whenever the Son of Man may come in his glory, and all the holy messengers with him, then he shall sit upon a throne of his glory, and gathered together before him shall be all the nations, and he shall separate them from one another, as the shepherd does separate the sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep indeed on his right hand, and the goats on the left. Then shall the king say to those on his right hand, Come ye, the blessed of my Father, inherit the reign that has been prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I did hunger, and ye gave me to eat. I did thirst, and ye gave me to drink. I was a stranger, and ye received me. Naked, and ye put around me. I was infirm, and ye looked after me. In prison I was, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see thee hungering, and we nourished, or thirsting, and we gave to drink? And when did we see thee a stranger, and we received, or naked, and we put around? And when did we see thee infirm, or in prison, and we came unto thee? And the king answering shall say to them, Verily I say to you, inasmuch as ye did it to one of these my brethren, the least to me ye did it. Then he shall say also to those on the left hand, Go ye from me, the cursed, to the fire of the age during, that has been prepared for the devil and his messengers. So that verse there I just thought was, very relevant in a poetic way, not necessarily as a hardcore evidence way, but we can see here that Jesus is saying that, he told them when I was in prison, he helped me, and the people are like, well, when did we see you in prison? And he says, well, whatever you've done to everybody else is the same as doing unto me. So I think that there is an allusion to how we all are in prison. And also the parable just before that was all about the king lending talents to the servants and then coming back and him receiving the money back. And that can link over to another verse here. Another prison verse. And in the New Testament, let's go and bring that up. In Matthew 5:25, this is a great hidden verse. It's not really hidden, but the revelation is hidden. It says, Be agreeing with thy opponent quickly while thou art in the way with him, that the opponent may not deliver thee to the judge, and the judge may deliver thee to the officer, and to prison thou mayest be cast. Verily, verily, I say to thee, in verse 26, thou mayest not come forth thence till that thou mayest pay the last farthing. Let me read that again without that interruption. Be agreeing with thy opponent quickly while thou art in the way with him, that the opponent may not deliver thee to the judge, and the judge may deliver thee to the officer, and to prison thou mayest be cast. Verily I say to thee, thou mayest not come forth thence till that thou mayest pay the last farthing. So what he said in simple English is that the judge, who is God obviously, if he finds that you're not worthy, he's going to cast you into prison. And when you're in prison, this is the important part, that when you're in prison, you don't come out until you pay back the last farthing. This is obviously not a parable, sorry. definitely a parable, because when you go to prison, you don't go to prison to pay back things. You can only pay back when you're not in prison, where you can work and earn money. This is obviously a hint that when you're in that this world, which is a prison, you're here paying off your debt. And the way you pay off your debt is through suffering and everything, and also including your death, your mortal death. So that's how when the judge casts you into prison, you're not allowed out until your debt is paid off. Right? When you die, you're taken to be judged, like the thief on the cross with Jesus. Jesus said, "Verily, you'll be with me today in paradise." So when you die, you're judged. And also, when Lazarus and the rich guy died, they were obviously both judged immediately, because they both went to their according places, the Hades and the like. So when you die, you're judged, and then the judge, who is God, will sentence you to prison if need be. If you've earned release, then you've earned release. But how does God make that judgment? He looks at your balance sheet. If he sees that in your lifetime, your prison sentence, basically, you didn't pay off your debt, then you still have debt to society, so to speak. So you're not worthy to be let out of prison. You've basically extended your sentence. And this is when the person will be cast living back into the fire. Right? But we're coming to the end of the age, where it's not going to be more time for that recycling, so to speak. We're coming to the end of the age where the Old and the New Testament prophecy, that where they lay down the fact that there's going to be a great judgment on this earth, right? And anybody who is still alive or who just died is going to be judged all then. And why is this? Because the world's going to be recreated, and it's going to be more blessed. And it's possible that it won't be a prison world when it becomes the world to come. It might be that its prison time, its time as functioning as a prison, will be over, right? Its purpose will have been dealt, and it'll be made anew and blessed. A lot of people believe we'll be here living immortal lives, and the world will be a blessed place and all of that, right? So that's why there would be this massive judgment time. So it's a little bit different in our case, because we're in the latter days. Now, I believe Jesus is coming any year now, but not everybody agrees. But nonetheless, we're in the latter days. But generally speaking, we're here living out our prison sentence, and you have your lifetime to pay off your debt. Now, how do you pay off your debt? Like Jesus said, you turn the other cheek when someone comes up against you. And why would this be? It's because you're owed that suffering. So when you're getting your suffering or your punishment, right, which comes in all forms of equal recompense, you may not know why you're getting that. Jesus doesn't, says, that doesn't matter. If you get oppressed, if someone comes up to rob you or strike you, you turn the other cheek, so to speak, right? And that's because you deserved that, what is coming to you. And the only way your balance sheet can reflect, how it's supposed to go, is if you endure that suffering, right? So if you endure that suffering and don't add to it by fighting back or this and that there, then your balance sheet will reflect that. Okay, but if you add to your debt, then what are you doing? You're adding to your sentence and your punishment. That's the problem. And that's why Jesus said, when the judge casts you into prison, you're not coming out until you paid back the last penny, every last thing that you owe. And God said in the Old Testament, in the law he gave to Moses, he said that, and Jesus still lives by these principles, God said that if man sheds another man's blood, then by man must his blood be shed. Jesus said the same thing. If you kill by the sword you will be killed. If you lead into prison you will be led. Right? Take into captivity, right? You'll be led into captivity. And it's also why Jesus says, I come to render unto each according to their works. The other one where it says, God is not mocked, each shall reap what they have sown. This is how the law of God works, Old Testament and New Testament. It's nothing new with Jesus, nothing new at all. Jesus is our defense lawyer, so to speak. God is the judge, and Satan is the accuser. It's not that Satan has that set position, that's just what he's acting as. Right? And Jesus, that's not his sole position, but that's what he's acting as. And likewise with God. God is not just the judge, but these are the positions that they're occupying, whether directly or in the case of Satan, indirectly. Because Satan accuses us, and the one who defends us is Jesus to God, because he's the intermediary between God and man. So because we're in prison, You know, Jesus came to prison to visit the prisoners and to teach them how to earn release. You see what I mean? How to not fail when it comes to your probation or your liberation hearing, right? He came to teach us that, look, no, this is why you're here. You have to pay off your debt. Don't add to your debt, right? He says, let me pull up that verse because that verse is very important. Oh, I can quote it. I remember it now. It's Paul wrote, it behooveth us all to be manifest before the tribunal of the Christ, that is on the judgment day, or when you die, right, when you're judged. It behooveth us all to be manifest before the tribunal of the Christ, that we may each receive in our bodies the things done in our bodies, whether good or evil. So all these different things, when you put them together, and it's why also Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It all reflects back to this karmic type law. Action begets an equal and opposite reaction. That's how God's law works, right? If you kill, you will be killed, like God and Jesus said. It doesn't have to happen exactly eye for an eye, but it happens by equal recompense. And there are many verses where God talks about his law works by equal recompense. So, let me start getting into some of these verses here. If we search what I'm going to do is search the Bible for the term prison and see if I can find some. There's a lot of verses here, but I'll go through all these. I skimmed through them before, and there's a few that I do want to read out. One in particular, let's reflect on the fact that Satan was imprisoned here, Revelation 12. And the other chapters of Revelation show that the pit is on this earth, and when the pit is opened up, the earth goes dark, and the prisoners come out of the pit to wreak havoc on the earth. I mean, that really lets you know that this earth is functioning as a prison, at least for them. You see what I mean? So some people might want more proof that it's a prison for us as well. Revelation 2:10, there's a famous statement that a lot of people wonder and scratch their head over, where Jesus says, be not afraid of the things that thou art about to suffer. Lo, the devil is about to cast you to prison, that ye may be tried, and ye have tribulation 10 days. Become thou faithful unto death, and I will give to thee the crown of life. Another allusion to the prison of this earth in Revelation 20 verse 7, when the 1,000 years may be finished, the adversary shall be loosed out of his prison. I mean, what's the ultimate prison? A prison for little humble humans, or a prison for the ultimate devil, right? If this earth is the prison for the ultimate devil, then I don't see what the fussing is over if it's an intermediary prison for humble humans. You see what I mean? We humble humans are in the prison for the dark devil, evil lord. So we're in the maximum security prison, as maximum as you can get. You see what I mean? There's no need for petty arguments. If we're in the place where the worst of the worst is in prison, then we're definitely in prison. In 1 Peter 3:19, it says, in which also to the spirits in prison, having gone, he did preach. This was Jesus. After he died, he went to the spirits in prison. Where was this prison? It was on this world. Where is the Hades and all of that? It's in this world. The Hades is a prison. So we see that Satan, and there's no talk of Satan being in Hades, he's in the pit. So we have the isolation, maximum security, we have the, what's the word? Maximum security, personal isolation or something. That's the pit. That's where Satan is, right? And the chief fallen angels. Then we also have, not necessarily the isolation chambers, right? But then we have like the general maximum security prison level, which would be Hades. But then we also have the lesser, which is where we are, the surface world, where, the physical world. But this is also part of the prison, right? And another important verse, I'll go back to the prison verses in a moment, is where God, earth, footstool. If we search the Bible for the terms earth and footstool, we get 4 results. And let's just read all these results. They'll speak for themselves, right? Isaiah 66 verse 1 says, thus said Jehovah, the heavens are my throne, and the earth my footstool. Where is this, the house that ye build for me, and where is this, the place my rest? Let me just open that chapter up just in case. So what that shows us as it's opening up is this world isn't like a bountiful, like world that's meant for splendor. It's his footstool. It's where he puts his feet, right? That's like, for lack of a better word, because I can't think of a better one, that's like a sign of disrespect. I'm not saying that God disrespects us. I can't think of the best word. You know what I mean? It's like a derogatory thing. He says, the earth is my footstool. The heavens are his throne, and the earth is his footstool. The throne is getting the upper hand, and the footstool is getting the derogatory situation. You see what I mean? Ironically, I'll read this merely because it plays into the law of perfect justice and equal recompense, like I said, and being cast back into the fire of the prison. Isaiah 66 verse 3, just 2 verses later, God's mysterious statement where he says, whoso slaughtereth the ox smiteth a man, whoso sacrificeth the lamb beheadeth a dog. Very interesting stuff, right? I'll let that digest in people's brains. I won't further explain that. So let's go back to the results for footstool and earth. Lamentations 2:1. How does the Lord cloud in his anger the daughter of Zion? He has cast from heaven to earth the beauty of Israel, and has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. Matthew 5:35. Nor by the earth, because it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, because it is a city of a great king. So we've definitely got it affirmed that earth is his mere footstool, right? And in Acts 7:49, the last of the four, the heaven is my throne and the earth my footstool. He's just quoting again Isaiah 66. Now, if we go to, I believe it's Psalm 110, we see something striking. Psalm 110 verse 1, a psalm of David, the affirmation of Jehovah to my Lord. Sit at my right hand at his throne, right? Till I make thine enemies thy footstool. So, till I make thine enemies thy footstool. I mean, Psalm 110 is one of the most important psalms to Christians, right? So this should tell us all that, yeah, definitely, just like the other 4 verses affirm, this earth is his footstool, and it's where his enemies go, right? So he tramples this footstool in his wrath. I think there's another verse that says that, but I think the proof has spoken for itself already. And I won't get into all the verses that talk about the world being a furnace and a fire, because that's just a whole nother topic. It'll take an hour to tie in all the verses to that. That does also help support it. But let me get back to the prison verses now, because that's what I wanted to cover specifically in this video. Spell it right, that would help. All the mysterious questions about life, like why am I here against my will? Why am I born to suffer and die? Why does all this bad happen? Why does bad stuff happen to good people? Why is the devil here doing all that he does? Why does God allow all this? All of those questions are answered by this world being a prison. There's no more questions after that. You see what I mean? It's just an understanding. So I'm going to go through the list for prison again. Like I said, it's 94 results, so just bear with me. I know in Psalms there is a few. Let's read Psalms then. Psalm 79:11. A lot of these will reflect on to earth being a prison, so just keep that in mind when I read these. Let the groaning of the prisoner come in before thee. Psalm 79:11. According to the greatness of thine arm, leave thou the sons of death. And reflect on the fact that this world, this earth, is where mortals live. Creatures, plants, and humans, we're all mortal creatures here. Have you ever thought about that? Why did God make a world of suffering and death? Why is this everything here mortal? There's no immortals here. When you become immortal, you leave here. You know what I mean? Immortals could only visit as angels. You see what I mean? Why is it so restricted here? It makes a lot of sense when you realize it's a prison, right? And reading Psalm 79 again, let's check that out with that knowledge, right? It says, "Let the groaning of the prisoners come in before thee, according to the greatness of thine arm. Leave thou the sons of death." So the prisoners that come to you seeking, release through good works and all of that and paying off their debt, they'll be granted release. But the ones who are just immersed in sin brings death. The penalty of sin is death, right? If the penalty for sin is death, that alone tells you if you're born to die, you're born to a penalty. You're born in a penalty, right? Where are you penalized? Prison. You're in a penal system, right? So, leave thou the sons of death, to me, on a deeper level, reads that, those who succumb to mortality and sin, let them stay there, right? In Psalm 102:20, again, it says, "To hear the groan of the prisoner, to loose sons of death." Remember, Jesus, the famous prophecy of Messiah and that Jesus reiterated is that God would not forsake his soul to Hades, which we know is the prison that Jesus preached to. So God didn't forsake Jesus' soul in prison, right? He heard the groan of that prisoner. Jesus came like one of us, right? So Jesus came as a prisoner and put on his prison garments like we have, bore the death like we have to bear, bore all the suffering like we have to bear. So as a prisoner, he groaned. When he died, he groaned to God, right? And God heard his groans, and he loosed him from being a son of death. You see my point? In Psalm 142:7, "Bring forth from prison my soul to confess thy name. The righteous do compass me about, when thou conferrest benefits upon me." In Psalm 146:8, Jehovah is loosing the prisoners. Jehovah is opening the eyes of the blind. Jehovah is raising the bowed down. Jehovah is loving the righteous. Ecclesiastes 4:14, "For from a house of prisoners he has come out to reign, for even in his own kingdom he has been poor." I personally think this is like an allusion to Jesus, right? Isaiah 24:22, another prison verse that shows us that this earth functions as a prison for higher beings. "And they have been gathered, a gathering of bound ones in a pit, and shut up they have been in a prison, and after a multitude of days are inspected." This is talking about the hosts of the high place on the high, and the kings of the land on the land. Isaiah 42:7, very important prophecy about the Messiah. What is it said about him? It says, "To open the eyes of the blind." Again, remember, it's got eyes opening, talking about prison again, right? And I want to put into the title here how you truly open your eyes and wisdom. I just couldn't fit it all into the title, right? Like the true wisdom opens your eyes to see that you're in prison. That's what I want the title to be. And lo and behold, a lot of these verses tie in opening the eyes of the blind to prison talk, right? But in Isaiah 42:7 it says, "To open the eyes of the blind, to bring forth from prison the bound one, from the house of restraint those sitting in darkness." All right? And let's scroll down through Jeremiah. I don't think there's any in Jeremiah. No. This is interesting. I'll just read it just because it's here. But Zechariah 9:11. Upon reading the full chapter, it may not be relevant, but I'll just cover it in case. It says, "Also thou, by the blood of thy covenant, I have sent thy prisoners out of the pit. There is no water in it." That would be interesting if it's an allusion to Jesus, right? The blood of the covenant. That terminology is used a lot in regards to Jesus in the New Covenant. In the New Testament, sorry. Okay, now we're into the New Testament. Some of these I've already read, so I'm just scrolling down through them. A lot of these are talking about like John and different people actually being cast into real physical prison on earth. Just bear with me as I go down the list here. Yeah, I read that one already. Also, it's relevant. where Jesus came and opened up the prison to let the prisoners out. It's not in like in Acts 5:19. It's not necessarily that Jesus is lawless, right? He's not about lawlessness. He's about keeping law. So why would Jesus come and let prisoners out? You know what I mean? Stuff like that there. I think that the imagery there is an allusion to him bringing us out of the darkness that is this prison world. You see what I mean? It might be that I'm almost at the list of the new, finished the list of the New Testament verses. It's possible I've already read the relevant ones out of there. Almost finished the list now. Interesting. Only about 6 verses left. Oh, here we go. Here, interestingly, Paul is referring to himself as a prisoner of Christ. In Ephesians 3:1, for this cause I, Paul, the prisoner of Christ Jesus, for you, the nations. Ephesians 4:1, call upon you then do I, the prisoner of the Lord, to walk worthily of the calling with which you are called. In 2 Timothy 1:8, therefore thou mayest not be ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me his prisoner, but do thou suffer evil along with the good news according to the power of God. Philemon 1:1, Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, and Timotheus, the brother, to Philemon, our beloved and fellow worker. Philemon 1:9, because of the love I rather entreat, being such a one as Paul the aged, and now also a prisoner of Jesus Christ. Then we come to 1 Peter 3:19, where Jesus says, in which also to the spirits in prison having gone he did preach. So yeah, I've covered all the rest of the New Testament ones. So we can see these allusions in the Bible. I think it's a great revelation. I don't think it's something that's openly taught, but it doesn't take much when you piece together that the earth is his footstool. He puts his feet on, he tramples it with his feet in his wrath. You know, when he's not trampling it, he's resting his feet on it, which is a sign of like disrespect. You know what I mean? It's like derogatory. It shows that we're underneath him. You know what I mean? And it's his feet of all places. You know what I mean? It's not like it's a nice pillow for his head. It's where his feet go, and your feet trod on things. And when you piece that together with how the earth is a furnace and it's burning, you know, the smoke of our torment goes up to the ages, it's quite clear that this world is a prison. And that's a great revelation that we need to wake up to. It answers all the great questions as to why we're suffering, and then all the difficult things that God and Jesus said make perfect sense, right? Why we just have to tolerate suffering, you know what I mean, and why bad people can do bad and then they're just forgiven. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Like if a guy comes up to you and robs you, you're a bad person for fighting back. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of people wonder. Like it doesn't make any sense why you have to turn the cheek. And then that thief might go off and repent the next day and be forgiven, and he's in the clear. Like it doesn't make sense, right? Until you have this knowledge, because everything happens for a reason and everything is perfect justice. People and conscious beings can't manipulate it. God's in control and everything happens according to his will. So nobody can maliciously, you know, manipulate it selfishly for personal gain. Nobody can resist it. Now there are some other verses here which talk about imprisonment in other terms, like chains and stuff like that. So I think some of these would be worth reading. So bear with me as I bring these up. I have to bring these over into the right translation. Well, in Daniel 7, for example, when you have the judgment scene, it really does seem like a scene that you would see at prison court, where God is the judge, there's flaming fire coming out from him, and all the people are marched up, right? Same type of imagery. In Isaiah 48, behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction. Like I said, there's a lot of verses that talk about earth being a burning furnace. Maybe it's not worth me getting into all these other ones, so it'll take a lot of time to Yeah, I'm not going to do that to the viewing audience again. So that's good enough for now, I think. Let me check my time. 29 minutes. Alright, well, I'll get going for now. That's all I need to do. Talk on this for so long. People can think about this in their own time. Take care, folks.